Hello and welcome to another Josh Plays 40k painting tutorial. Today I will be painting an Adeptus Sororitas Arco-Flagellant. So let's grab some brushes and get started. So the first thing we're going to do after priming the model in grey cere is we're going to work on the metal detail, which comprises quite a lot of these models. So you've got obviously the weapons down the hands, these weird tentacle arm things, there's piping all around the top of the head and needles going in the back and what have you, and these little sort of chain links around the legs here. And the reason we're going to do that first is because so we don't mess up if we get any silver onto the cloth or the legs or the skin areas themselves. We can soon touch them up with grey cere instead of having to try and fix the skin wash afterwards. So work your way around the model, take your time, as I say, with lead belcher, and we'll soon be able to pick out all those metal works and moving on. So do work your way around and see. Once that lead belcher is applied and you've tidied up any mistakes going back with grey cere, we're going to pick out a few of those sort of silvery details that you want to be sort of more of a goldish colour. For this we're going to use Nasdreg yellow. When applied over the top of lead belcher or any sort of silvery metallic, this goes a really nice sort of gold effect with obviously the shading that goes with it. And for what we're going to do is the parts I feel would be better with gold. So you've got these sort of syringes on the back here, so the sort of central parts of those, just put a coat sort of over the top, and then also the sort of name tag number at the front here, you could coat that in gold as well. Once you've picked out all the goldy details, the next we're going to move on to is this sort of cowl around the mask section here on the model. And for this we'll be using Black Templar, as it gives a nice sort of over highlight when applied on a lighter background. Once you're happy with that Black Templar, we're going to move on to Zandri Dust, and this is to get any sort of cowling that's on the model, so any cloth material. So particularly this sort of loin cloth here, and also the part that goes just sort of around the back of the model. So do take your time. If you make any mistakes, just go back over with grey cere again before we move on to any shading. Once you're happy with how that cloth looks, we're going to move on to shading both those silver, gold and patchwork colours. So for first of all, we are going to use a shade of Nun Oil, and this is for all the gold and silver parts of the model, including sort of any of these little plugs that are in the skin, just like this. So just sort of gently get the recesses on those, and also coat all the silver and gold parts together. It will give them a nice sort of dirty downed appearance, and we can sort of add a few little highlights afterwards. So work your way around the model and pop that shade on. So the next shade we're going to do for the cloth areas is Agrax Earth Shade, and again, same as before, just put a nice thin coat over the cloth to pick out those details. Now you will find that with either of these shades you might get a little bit onto the skin. Now this is another reason why we haven't done the skin tones yet, but you can also touch up with grey cere again if you need to. They do have a tendency to run sometimes, particularly when you're using the Nun Oil on these little plugs. You will find that they may just run where you don't want it to go into the skin crevices, so just be sure to tidy that up before moving on to the skin stage next. Once you've got those shades dry, we're going to move on to putting some shade onto the skin. Now for this we're going to be using a mix of Magos Purple and Contrast Medium. Now for this you want it to be very thin, almost translucent, as it just adds a nice little sort of tinge to the skin, giving it an almost sort of demony feel to it. But also the fact that obviously these girls and boys have not been well looked after and pulled about over the years. So what we're going to want to do is you're going to want sort of 5 to 6 small brush fills of Contrast Medium to 1 small brush of Magos Purple to give it a nice sort of thin look to it, and then you just want to sort of carefully start layering it overall the skin, the model. Now some of these do differ depending on which model you're doing from the box, but from this one's got quite a bit of skin to it, so just carefully work your way around and then let that dry. So the next part we're going to do is sort of continuing to break up that silver a little bit. The model itself and lots of the other ones have these little sort of cables that come around the skin. So there's one around the back here as well, and at the top here. And for what we're going to do is just add a little bit of sort of colour to these. Now you can use really whatever colours you like, but I've got here with me Grifthound Orange, Blood Angels Red and Warp Lightning, just to sort of break it up, be a bit more variant with the colours so they're not all the same. And really it's just personal choice on how and when you put these on, but you just choose whichever one you like at any one time and just start sort of going over the cables itself. So for this one I've got Warp Lightning, and that would look quite nice over the one on the back leg here. And you can coat this straight over the metal because again it helps sort of making it look like a sort of more metallic pipework going through, and also sort of keeps the sort of darker and gringier look to the model. So staying with that silver, we're next going to highlight up some of those edges with Rune Fang Steel. So this is really just a bit like an edge highlight for those sort of sharp edges, so particularly for the claws and weapons here that we've got sort of coming down on the model. The pipe works here just to sort of bring a bit of a shine back to them, and any sort of places where the light is really going to catch it. So these sort of plugs on the model here, you could give them a little bit more of a shine so they stand out a little bit more. And obviously they're sort of breaking up the sort of tentacle arm here as well. So sort of work your way around and pick out any of the details you want to stand out a little bit more, and then we can move on to the next step. And then a nice highlight to the back to the cloth work, we're going to use Xandri Dust once more, and this is just to pick out those raised edges that would still be a little bit brighter, and sort of keeping the recess shading that we put on with the Agrax Earth shade. And then finally, just to finish off that skin, we're going to use a highlight of Pallid Witch Flesh, and this is to pick out just those sort of raised scars areas that are on the skin. These poor models are absolutely covered in them, so just work your way very carefully over the tops of those, and you almost can just rub your brush over the top of them and it will pick them out, but just carefully work your way around until you've got them all. And there we have a finished Arco-Flagellant. I really hope you've enjoyed this video on how to get these models up and ready on the table in good time. If you have any questions at all, just let me know in the comments below, but otherwise we'll see you in the next one. Thank you, bye.